I was struggling to connect with my wife. We were young and newly married. She was pregnant. There were a lot of responsibilities that we'd taken on early on, including home ownership at that time. And I think that just proximity and
Yes, and that's the reason Luigi over here gives for essaying his wife's baby sister, who was just 12 years old. And he did it for years until she finally came out and told them when she was 17, after he had had three children with his wife. So you got to take a step back and realize that he is here grooming his wife's baby sister while he is making babies and playing house. And he blames it. What's his excuse in prison? It was stressful. I was having a hard time connecting. I had just bought a house. Mr. Luigi, that is not an excuse. Shame on you. Will the parole board release him? He's got a 3 to 100-year sentence. I'll let you know at the end.
Mr. Atwood, you were committed to prison on case number 201-911-395, attempted aggravated sexual abuse of a child, first-degree felony, minimum 3-year sentence, potential life sentence with a 42-month guideline, putting you at January of 2025. You were initially scheduled for a hearing back in September of 2022. The hearing was continued to today's date with the expectation that you complete the sex offender treatment program and comply with your case action plan. I'll go over whatever progress you've made in those areas. Before I do that, I need to go over your commitment offense with you. This was all reported back in July of 2020. It was reported that you abused your niece. It was delay report. Is that?
so it was my sister-in-law, my wife's sister.
Oh, okay. And if I understand this correctly, she was 17 years old when this was reported, but the abuse occurred prior to that.
Yes, sir.
5 to 7 years prior to the report.
Yes, sir.
So she would have been approximately 12 when this occurred.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it's reported that the abuse consisted of you touching her on her a number of times.
Yes, sir.
Was there additional incidents of abuse other than touching?
No, sir.
And how many times did you abuse her in this manner?
I'm not sure, sir.
Just approximate?
Yeah, multiple times.
10, 15, less than that?
That sounds about right, sir.
And then what were the circumstances that led you to commit this offense?
So I've explored this extensively in therapy and in the treatment program. And it seems to be that the underlying issues that led to my offense had to do with me being unable to handle my emotions and to build and maintain healthy relationships. I had been victimized as a child and over sexualized as a child. And that led to me utilizing thinking errors such as justification and minimization to act out sexually against the victim.
And you would have been in your low 20s when this occurred?
Yes, sir.
Was it something that you had been thinking about, fantasizing about prior to acting out on this?
No, sir. It was impulsive.
Are there any other victims out there, uncharged victims?
No, sir.
Why do you think of all of the people around you that you chose to victimize your sister-in-law?
I believe it's because it was somebody that I was close to, somebody that I did care about, and felt a connection to. I was struggling to connect with my wife. We were young and newly married. She was pregnant. There were a lot of responsibilities that we'd taken on early on, including home ownership at that time. And I think that just proximity and the abuse of the position of power that I held as her brother-in-law.
Are
that
you
led to that.
still married, divorced now?
Separated, we're in the process of finalizing our divorce.
Any reason why you would have any future contact with the victim of record?
The only reason would be I do have children with my wife. And I don't know if there would ever be a time where we would both be supporting my children. Other than that, outside of that, I see no reason why I would have contact with her.
How many children do you have? How old are they?
3 children, ages 9, 7, and 5.
Do you have contact with them while you're incarcerated?
Yes, sir.
They come down and visit, a phone visit, or phone calls?
Phone calls.
And once the divorce is finalized, is it your understanding that your soon-to-be ex-wife will maintain that type of contact for you and the children? Or?
Yes, absolutely. We've established a good co-parenting relationship.
We'll go in depth as to what you've been working on in the sex offender treatment program, but I had a question in my mind I want to ask you before I lose my train of thought. During the course of treatment or just during the course of your incarceration, have you put some thought into the impact that these type of offenses have on children?
Absolutely.
If you could explain what insight you have to that.
So I recognize, I guess to clarify your question, do you mean how it impacts my children specifically, or how it just impacts?
Know how these type of offenses, sexually abusing children, how it impacts the victim of these offenses. And you can even talk specifically about the victim of record, how this has impacted her.
Yeah, I can recognize that my actions can cause incredible trauma, not just in the sexual realm, but in how somebody makes connections, how they view relationships, and how they can feel safe in those relationships. I can see that my actions, specifically to the victim of record, c- could have caused that harm, um, and that's going to be lasting. That's not something that goes away, especially because she was so young at the time of my offense. I've thought a lot about how that's going to impact her for the rest of her life.
I do have a discharge summary in front of me from the sex offender treatment program dated August 29th of 2024. Did you get a copy of this?
Yes, sir.
You had the opportunity to review it with the clinician.
Yes, sir.
It does indicate that you've completed all aspects of the program successfully. You completed both, it's like the pre-treatment, core treatment. It states, I'm quoting from the report, that you were a model inmate during your time incarcerated, that you've taken advantage of education opportunities, job programs, that you took the program seriously and consistently described your desire for personal change. It states that you may benefit if you participate in continued care through ongoing therapy with an approved sex offender task force provider. Now, this encompassed a large period of time to get through all those portions of programming, but if you could just generally summarize what you learned, if there's any main takeaways from the program.
Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway for me has been recognizing my own thinking errors, that led to allowing me to commit my offense, allowing myself to commit my offense, and not only recognizing those thinking errors, but learning how to uh, uh, push against them, how to stop myself from continuing along those same thought processes. That's been my number one takeaway, is identifying whatever reality distortions I may be experiencing, and then preventing myself from continuing on that path.
If you could go over your release plans, uh, that would be one consideration the board will make after today's hearing, whether or not it's appropriate to consider release. And given the nature of the offense, it would be a supervised release. You'd be required to follow through with all of the conditions of parole, including no contact with the victim of record. But if you could outline where you plan on, you don't have to give a specific address, but where you plan on living, what you plan on doing upon release.
Yeah, yes, sir. So my parents have offered to allow me to live with them in their home in West Jordan, Utah. So I would hope to parole there. Um, as far as work goes, I've gained incredibly valuable skills through the Reading for the Blind program as an audiobook narrator. I've worked there for 2 years consistently, and I would love to continue in the field of audiobook narration or voiceover. However, I do also have considerable skills and experience in customer service and software support, and I believe that I'd be able to find a job pretty easily in one of those fields. I have a strong work ethic, and I believe in supporting myself. I would also seek aftercare treatment, even if that weren't mandated. I think that's something that I would want to continue. I've gained significantly by going to therapy and receiving treatment, and so that's something that I would want to continue either way.
Even housed at this facility, not a management problem, no disciplinary issues as mentioned in that treatment summary. The board has your board packet that you submitted prior to today's hearing, which outlines in detail more of the things that we've discussed today. So that'll be taken into consideration. As I mentioned at the start of the hearing, they'll look at that 3-year minimum sentence, 42-month guideline, and somewhere within those parameters, decide if and when you should be released. They're not bound by that guideline date. They could go above it if they felt it was appropriate to do so. If they were considering a release at guideline, you'd be eligible for a time cut or reduction from that. Whatever date they put in place, you'll be eligible for a reduction based off of your program completion. If they were considering a release at or near guideline, just given to where we're at now into September, by the time they make a decision, you would get that full 4 months, but you would get some reduction from that date. Those are all the questions I had for you. Anything else that we haven't mentioned that you want to make sure the board considers?
I would think that the number one thing on my end is how much I regret my actions. Um, I again recognize the harm that I caused, and not only to the victim directly, but how my incarceration, my actions that led to my incarceration have affected my family, my ex-wife, my children. Um, I realize that they've gone through a lot of tribulation because of this, and I recognize that that's my fault. That's my responsibility. I'm thankful for your time, for the time of the board, in considering parole. Um, and yeah, that's it.
Here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll receive the board order through the mail. It'll outline exactly what the expectations are moving forward, and if they decided to set a release date, what that date is and the conditions of that. You'll likely get that in a few weeks. Thank you for your time today. I'll go ahead and conclude.
Well, guess what? They granted. He is actually out, and I'm sorry to inform you that he has kept the mustache. This is the photo that he has to use to allow everyone in the world to know what he has done. Now, again, you might be watching and saying, well, it wasn't full on essay. He served his time, have some empathy for him. But the bottom line is, I just don't buy it. I don't buy any of it. We have seen that men will marry women for their children. I believe maybe he married her for his sister. They do that. It's an obsession. You don't just randomly go and start with a 12-year-old girl, your wife's sister. Do you think that he's putting everything on the line? His children, the embarrassment that he brings, everything. Why? And that he tore their family apart, that the sisters have to go through that every time they have family get together. They have to have this black clot on their lives because of you, because you selfishly, you jerk. Whew. And he says he says it through his parole hearing with really no remorse, no emotion, nothing. He was speaking it out like reading through a manual, like reading through, like he was playing a game of Mario Kart. Imagine if you had wrecked everyone's lives, if you now couldn't have a healthy relationship with your children, that you tore away the mother father, like it's all on you because of your selfishness, because of your PD, because you really. And you're not going to show emotion at your parole hearing. You're not going to like at least maybe almost shed a tear. No, it's because he doesn't actually care. He's only upset that he got caught. I don't think any of what I just described to you, bringing down to how real what it is that he did, I don't believe he goes through that, because you saw nothing there. He still wears this. Who the hell would dress like that? Like, I understand that, hey, if you're a hipster and a band or whatever, but really, you're in prison, dude, for what you did. You're gonna now go sport that mustache. And by the way, I'll tell you, I'm a fan of it. If he had any other crime in his jacket, I would say that's cool. But when you have a dirty jacket like that, it's not cool anymore.
Sit down in this chair. And I figured she just wanted to talk. Well, she started massaging my shoulders and back. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "This is what I'd like to do to people I like." Well, the next thing you know is I dismissed I dismissed it because she's an adult, I'm adult, and I didn't know that she at that time she was mentally diminished. I knew that she had a disability because of the walker, but I didn't know she was mentally diminished.
And a man due 3 years ago may have bought hook, line, and sinker what this man is about to serve. But today, no, I do not. And he has a long record of SA offenses. His first offense to a child happened in 1995. And you know it was bad because he was not released on parole until 2009. So he's facing a life sentence. He had his life on the line, and for him to end up doing this to someone who is not mentally there, to put it all on the line, it's disturbing. Now, we're about to watch this man's parole hearing, and I think if you look up his name in the dictionary, you will see gaslighting next to it. You'll also see word salad, because we're about to get served a whole dish full of that. And again, don't be caught off guard by the Santa Claus look. This man is no Santa Claus. With that, let's jump in.
So it looks like a parole violation hearing occurred in May of 2022. The board noted your denials to allegations 1 through 2, took judicial notice of pending case 2119-00589, and scheduled a paper review. There was subsequent paper reviews. At the PV hearing, parole violation hearing in April of this year, the board accepted your admissions to allegations 1 through 2, took judicial notice of case 2219-00589, which did not result in board jurisdiction, and ordered a rehearing for now with sex offender assessment and contract psychological review. Does that sound procedurally correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I am.
You're fine. In regards to your offense for which you originally incarcerated, I show case number 941901368. I'm not going to go over that offense. Maybe you've done in previous hearings. I'm just going to ask you if you have any comments about that offense.
If there's something that you want me to explain, I'm willing to explain the whole thing to you.
If you want to do that, I mean, obviously this is a hearing where I want to hear what you have
I
to
mean, what I
say.
came back to prison on, because as you know, the charges stayed into the courts, and I got put on felony probation.
And we'll talk about that parole. But I guess, do you have any insight into your original sex offense?
Oh, the very first one?
Yes. About your risks.
The what now?
About your risks.
Oh, no, I don't.
Do you think you have any risk?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what are your risks?
I would say my risk is, alcohol. Alcohol is always going to be a thing, that's always going to be a risk. Falling back into my old patterns, as sexualizing people, and stuff like this is always going to be a risk.
How do you plan on dealing with that risk moving forward?
I've set up so much support. The individuals that's behind me is my main support. But I've got all my sisters and brothers. I've got several friends. I've got, I'm going to get into the church sponsor system when I get out. They got a church system on the outside that's just nothing for parole people that is, sex offenders and stuff like this, where we can go to church, have sponsors, somebody we could, be able to contact if we're having hard times or whatnot. Say I can't get a hold of my brother or any of my other family, siblings or whatnot. I'd be able to contact one of them, I've set up, with my friends, the same thing, so I'm going to have a arsenal of different people that I could turn to. But the main thing about this whole situation is I've got to be the one that takes the steps. I've got to be the one that, asks for the help. That's my biggest downfall is, when I get, into a depressed state of mind and, I fall off and I start, getting into the depressed state of mind. See, I found my son dead
And I
on
did read that, and I'm sorry
on
for that.
September 19th. And 2021, and my world got flipped upside down. And I still struggle with that. And so the thing about it is, I try, part of me wanted to live, part of me wanted to die, because I didn't want to deal with the pain. And I almost went back to doing my old behavior of drinking, but some little voice in my head told me not to. And so I didn't. And I struggled to pull myself back together. So the thing about it, I think I got a better handle on it this time.
And why do you think that?
For the simple fact is that I think that I became complacent. I took the steps since I've been in prison. I've taken the steps to understand what, who I am, where I'm doing wrong. I've taken, the classes of, daring greatly, real transition, God, I got them wrote down. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I'm really
Okay,
stressed.
so I want to make sure I get to talk about your last parole a little bit. And then obviously I want to get to those other assessments.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. And I asked you for your insight, so I appreciate that, right? Because this is part of the hearing is for me to hear what you have to say.
I plan on, contacting, my parole officer. See, I did contact my parole officer and I did contact my, my therapist when, I found my, after I found my son dead. I'm the one that found my son dead in his apartment. He was face down on his bed, purple and everything. I found him dead. I can't, that would be ignorant to say that it would be as hard if somebody just told me he died, but it probably still would be hard. But I'm the one that found my own son dead on his bed, purple,
And I'm very sorry to hear that, sir.
But
I do want to make sure I get to your last parole, and I don't want to be dismissive of that in any way, right? But there was also behaviors on your last parole that were concerning, right? And
Yes.
I did receive the letter from your defense attorney. I want you to know I reviewed that and I read that. But I show you committed case number 221900589. Obviously, I already went through. It's not board jurisdiction, but the violation of itself is, right. So I show that you went to a hotel. You met the victim. She had diminished mental capacity, and that you were in her room, and that she said that you were triggering her trauma, and then you sexually assaulted her. So tell me about that.
Okay. The thing about it is where I was moving at. I'm going to start with where I was living at first. I was living at the Home Inn, and it's a transitional housing. You could stay up to a year and a half there, and my year and a half was almost up. And even though I was going through my trauma that I was going through, I was trying to pull myself together enough to get, because I knew I had to move. And if I didn't do something, either I was going to, commit suicide, or I was going to, do whatever I have to do to, survive and keep going forward. So I pulled myself together enough to, and somebody told me about it was called the La Pointe Hotel. I went down there and filled out an application and everything, and they contacted my parole officer. He came down, he approved it, on the 6th, that's when, the hotel contacted me and said that I had been approved for the apartment. And I says, okay. And they says, can you come down and fill out the additional papers and stuff like this and get your key and, and stuff like this. And I said, yes, I can. Well, I came down, and that was on the January 6th. And I went up and I asked for the lady that I was told to ask for. God, what was her name? I can't even think of her name. But anyways, they told me if I would have a seat just for a sec, because she's busy for a second, she'll come out and talk to me. Well, then I went and sat down, and there was a few people, and plus the person I victimized. And the thing about it is, we introduced ourselves. I said hi, and she said hi, and that's when we introduced ourselves, and that's right as far as that got to that point, because they came out and says, Greg, would you come over here, and and they asked me a lot of questions, and then after they give me a tour of the place. Anyways, I moved in that night to the La Pointe Hotel, and but the following morning, I've been feeling kind of sick, even at that point in time. And so I went to the next morning to my doctors, to see if I, had COVID. And of course, I had COVID. So I quarantined myself from the 7th until the 14th. On the 14th is when I, came off the quarantine, and I left and I came back, and I was going up to my place, and I ran into the same lady that I met, out in the lobby on the day I moved in. She asked me, she goes, did you get settled into your place? And do you got a good view out your window? And I says, well, I says, yeah, I got settled in and everything. But I said, if you want to, I said, you come, see it, for yourself. So she came up, and she, came in and looked at, out the window, and, made the comment about the view, and made a comment about the bedspread that was on the bed, because it had lions and stuff like this. And we sat there and talked for, I'd say, maybe 5-10 minutes. And then she left. Well, and the next morning is, I decided to go try to find a small round coffee table to put into my apartment, so I could have something to eat on, instead of sitting on the bed, and eating. Well, the thing about it is that's when the victim, the person I victimized, or, the victim that, came up and started talking to me. And that's when, we talked back and forth for a second. She asked me, she goes, would you like to be my friend? I said, sure, I'll be your friend. And she said, would you mind coming to my place and help me move some stuff, that I can't move around? Because as she's on a walker, and I says, yeah, I have no problem. But I says, first of all, I says, I've got some errands that I've got to run. And then I says, when I come back, I says, I'll come down and help you. Well, the next thing you know is that I take off, and I go and do my things. I come back, and and I throw some clothes into the washer and stuff like this. And then she calls me, and she asks me, "Are you going to come down?" And I says, "Yeah," but I said, "Let me finish what I'm doing for a second." I said, "Then I'll come down." And she mentioned something about a moon out the window and stuff like this, and I says, "Okay." I says, "Give me a few minutes, I'll come down." Well, after I got done throwing a batch from the washer into the dryer, and then I put another batch in the wash thing. You asked for the whole thing, so I'm just giving you full.
Well, sorry, and appreciate you going into detail, but I mean, obviously the thing I'm concerned about is the sexual assault itself, right?
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm just well, it's getting to that point anyways. I went to her place. She showed me out the window at the moon. Anyways, she said, told me, she says, sit down in this chair. And I figured she just wanted to talk. Well, she started massaging my shoulders and back. I says, what are you doing? And she said, this is what I'd like to do to people I like. Well, the next thing you know is I dismissed I dismissed it because she's an adult, I'm adult, and I didn't know that she at that time she was mentally diminished. I knew that she had a disability because of the walker, but I didn't know that she was mentally diminished. Anyways, the thing about it is that after her massaging my shoulders and that for about, I'd say about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, she made the comment she likes to have her back, and legs, massage because it helps with the nerve pain and that she deals with. I told her, I says, okay, you sit on either on the edge of the bed, or I said, lay on your belly, and I says, I'll massage your back and your legs. So, I massaged her back. Then I went down and massaged her legs. And then I came back up and, we was talking and, I started rubbing her back as she was still laid on her belly. And she reached up and pulled her shirt up and, for me to rub it without the shirt on. And the next thing you know is I thought, okay, maybe she would like to have, her back and legs massaged without the clothes on. So I, told her, I says, if you want to take off your, your pants, I says, I'll massage your pants. I mean, your legs without the pants on.
okay, so I understand that you're telling me that you did not understand her mental condition at the time. That it sounds like what you're saying to me is you thought it was consensual, which is what you maintained in the
Yes,
I think your board packet, and as well as what your defense attorney has stated.
yes.
And I understand that's where you're coming from. But she obviously noted that she said it was not. She felt it was not. How do you plan on dealing with these issues moving forward?
I plan on not getting into any kind of relationship, period. As any kind of, I'm going to have friends. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to have friends, but as sexual relationships and stuff like that, it's out. I'm, how do I put this? And I don't want this to sound too forward. I cannot do anything anyways. And so, it's just the thing about it is that I don't plan at my age, I don't plan on, having a sexual, close relationship with any females anymore.
So, right, we're in limited time, so I want to make sure I get to the contract psychological evaluation. Do you remember meeting with Dr. Mom?
What's that?
Do you remember meeting with Dr. Mom?
Yeah, I do.
Any comments you have about that report?
No, actually, she was pretty thorough. She was really friendly. I mean, she was very patient. There was, several times I had to ask her to repeat, and she did. She was, I mean, very professional, I thought.
Okay. Were you taking those medications when the sexual assault occurred?
No, I fell apart. I fell apart and I stopped everything. I was stopping. I mean, I even stopped, the therapy, and I started, I hadn't went to work for a few days. So I had to pull myself back together, and I at least did pull myself back together to get the place.
So do you see going off of your medications as a risk?
Yes, I do see that, me not taking my medications as a risk. And that would be when you ask what a risk is, that's a risk.
And I appreciate your insight, right? Because that's part of
Yeah.
this hearing. One of the other things it noted was that you had, quote, thoughts of killing his wife prior to coming to prison, unquote. That's what she said in her report.
Killing who?
You had thoughts of killing your wife, is what it said in the report. And so I was wondering if you could give me insight to that. I'm assuming your
Oh, no,
ex-wife.
that was way, way years back, when I was married, the thing about it is one of my charges was that I went, assault, was always assaulting, my wife and stuff like this. And I found her, cheating on me 4 different times within a short period of time,
So do you still have those thoughts, sir?
No, I don't. I haven't seen my ex-wife for 20 plus years.
And that's why I'm asking, right? Because that's what
He asked me questions and I was totally honest.
and I appreciate that. But right, so I want to ask so I don't misinterpret anything, right?
Yeah.
And I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing that, right?
Okay. Thank
So
you.
it also provided some diagnoses. Do you remember those?
Say that in.
The report provided diagnoses. Do you remember the diagnoses?
Diagnoses. Okay. Which ones is that?
Use disorder.
Yeah.
Do you think those are accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And then the recommendations were for ongoing sex offender treatment, ongoing mental health services, and you would benefit from a halfway house. Do you agree with those recommendations?
I do. For the simple fact is that being in here is not beneficial for me in here. For the simple fact is that I'm more productive on the outside. I could go right back to my old job at Serta Mattress. That's what I plan on doing. And my brother even says that he could probably get me hired at his place of employment. Yeah,
And then I want to make sure I get to the sex offender assessment because, like I said, we're on limited time. So the sex offender assessment, do you remember receiving that, sir?
yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm not going to go into all the specifics of it, but one of the things it recommended was sex offender treatment. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think you need sex offender treatment?
I would hopefully hope that I get back into the aftercare with Vicky Fields because that's who I plan on getting back into.
So are you saying you would like treatment in the community versus prison? Is that what you're saying?
I would like that.
Would you refuse treatment in the prison?
I would not. I would, be willing for whatever the board decides to do.
All right, sir. Did you have substance use issues on your last parole?
No, I did not. I have not drank any alcohol since I came to prison the very first time.
All right. And then regarding, I noted that I received your attorney's letter. I've reviewed that. And just so you know, I also received your letter and I've reviewed that as well. And the board will have access to it. Okay.
Okay, I was, I sent a copy of the letter to you guys, but I was gonna read it, but so I guess I don't have to read it.
I mean, if it's the same letter, I read it in its entirety. So I don't think you need to reread it. If there's something you want to mention to me again, then that's fine. But I've read it in its entirety.
The only thing that I would say that that I did add to this one here is, is that I don't know if they got it down that I have been working at UCI for the last 6 months.
Okay. How's
I've
that
been
going?
active. What's that?
How's that going?
Oh, I love it.
That's good.
Yeah, I love it. I work at the press shop, I'm the one that does the stickers, the many, many stickers.
For the license or for the cars, right?
No,
oh,
no.
You don't.
I'm the one that does like the junior, sheriffs and the, the little stickers that you peel off and that you give to like the sheriffs that you give out to
Oh, gotcha.
like the kids,
Oh, okay.
stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I do when I don't have regular stickers to do, I do the DMV, and I've been doing the 26s, on the DMVs, so the new ones.
Okay. Anything else you want to highlight, sir?
No, actually, like I said, I was going to read the letter. I did mention, a few of the things like, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I'm so nervous. I just didn't know what to expect. So I just tried to be as prepared possible. I know I should remember all this, but my, being stressed, I got breathing. I use a breathing technique and it helps me calm me down,
Is that something you've learned in one of your treatment programs?
Yes. Yes.
That's good, sir. All right, sir, those are all of my questions from here. I'm a hearing officer. I make recommendations. The board ultimately decides. They're made up of 5 members. 3 of them have to come to one decision. That's the decision of the board. You should get that in writing within 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay, thank
Your
you.
family members, your friends, anyone listening to this hearing via video can go to bop.utah.gov. As soon as we have that decision, we post it on our website. Just so you know, it's not immediate. It still takes some time, but it's faster on the website than the mail, so they can look that up and tell you what that decision is while you're waiting for your written decision. Do you have any closing comments or questions for myself or for the board, sir?
No, I don't. The only thing I would, if they do decide to give me, another chance at parole, I would like to go to the halfway house. Even though I've got, family and stuff like that, that would help me get into a place. I've already decided to go to a halfway house for stabilization. That way I can, get everything taken care of, get back, on my medications. I can get it, have a constructive, environment, and get everything in a row before I just jump out into a place again. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I just want to, that way I can get a job. I can get everything taken care of. My medical, my mental health, my therapy, everything, put in place. Plus, I've got to also think about paying. I was assessed a $5,000 fine from, the courts that I've got to also, start, thinking about, because it's building up interest right now. And so it's like, that's something I've got to focus on too.
And like, once again, I'm a hearing officer. I don't know what the board will do, but I've made notes of everything you've said today. I appreciate you coming to this hearing. We'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Okay, and to my surprise, Utah actually denied his parole. So he has a rehearing scheduled for October of 2026. So he's got some time that he's got to wait right now. And man, we've seen Utah grant, I believe, even just the worst of the worst of the worst. So it surprises me when they sometimes don't. He's age 61 years old, and we'll go over again the initial crime, but remember, he was sentenced 15 years to life for the initial crime against a child. He served the full 15, gets out on parole, and then commits this offense. And he knew what he was doing was wrong. And it's just, it just blows my mind how someone will put their entire life on the line for a moment of their satisfaction, to take advantage of someone who's mentally disabled. But you might also say that maybe there was he allowed to be in that hotel? I don't know. I guess he had to stay away from kids, but they don't say stay away from people with diminished capacity. And that just shows how dangerous some of these, or many, or most of these people with these type of crimes are. It's a crime of opportunity. Yep, it could have been a child, it could have been an elderly person, it could have been someone of diminished. It didn't make a difference. He risked it all. And it's just everything you need to know. And then he pulls out all the stops. He plays on the death of his son, which happened 3 years ago. And yes, not taking any of that away from him, but I could not help but feel that he was playing those heartstrings and almost using his son, as trying to use it as an excuse. And also, when he describes the story and he goes through everything, it was just a perfect example of word salad and gaslighting. And we see that tactic all the time. It's nothing new. Now, let's just go over the incident here in the unpacking. Thank you, Sir Richard. And oh my God, he looks like a mirror image of Breaking Bad. If you had already thought this, maybe you caught it before me, but look at this. This is amazing. What was his name in Breaking Bad? How do I not Sean, main actor, Breaking Bad. His nickname was Heisenberg, right? I hope I had a cold. The actors, acting name. Walter White. Walter White. He looks like Walter White. Holy cow! Right, the resemblance. It's uncanny. Anyways, let me read this to you. And this was written January 17, 2022. On January 16, Gregory was arrested and booked in the Salt Lake County Jail on one count of forcible assault. And he did, like, wow. And 2 counts of forcible SA. 58-year-old Bain was originally charged with 13 felony charges related to sex crimes against children in 1993. He received 13 against children in 1993. You know, in Utah, when you get sentenced 15 to life for these type of crimes and you serve all 15, that it was bad, because we see people who get out in just a couple years for doing unimaginable. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of first-degree felony assault and tried to withdraw his guilty plea in 97, but was denied. On February 27, 95, Bain was sentenced to 15 years to life, but granted parole in 2020. His most recent, and it took him just 2 years to reoffend. Can you even imagine? And they would probably consider him a low-risk score at the time. His most recent offense involved a victim with diminished mental capacity who also suffers from epilepsy. In speaking to law enforcement, the victim stated that Bain allegedly entered her room and had been giving her a back rub before he touched her buttocks and told her to take her pants off. The victim explained how she told Bain his actions were triggering past traumatic events to resurface for her. Bain presumably ignored her, turning her over and placing his fingers in her. The victim went on to tell authorities that all of Bain's actions were unwanted, but she refrained from vocalizing that due to fear. Bain admitted these actions after having been read his Miranda rights, also stating that he knew what he had done was wrong due to the victim's diminished capacity. Bain's current offense is felony committed while on probation or parole or while free on bail, awaiting a trial for previous felony charges. And there is sufficient evidence to support the felony charge. And did they actually, I don't see in his jacket a new charge, so I'm not sure if they actually went through and charged him. I think they just revoked him, which we see DAs often do. They say, why do we need to do a trial? Let board of paroles handle it. I argue with that. I think that's a weak cop-out. We've seen how the Board of Paroles handle it. I bet you he's released anyways in 2 years. So if a DA really wanted to keep the community safe, they would bring on the new charges and prosecute it to the fullest. But again, we've seen that happen in Utah as well, and it doesn't make a difference. The sentences are run, concurrent or whatever, and nothing ends up happening. But you just got to think about this. And this, he's just a dangerous predator, and let out into the street. It only takes a little bit of time. Oof, it's so scary. So there you have it. I don't know what else to say on that. Thank you, Sir Richard, for providing the information on this case. I think this guy is just the typical roach, the typical dangerous predator, who is a man, dare call him a man, a monster of opportunity, and he was given an opportunity and he took it. And if one believes that one is caught 100% of the time that they do things, and the first time that they do things, that's just hard to believe. I just can't, even if you want to believe it, I can't believe that. The idea that he'd be caught his first time. What's also fascinating to me is someone who has just spent all these years in prison and going through, probation and all these things would still admit to the police after having his rights read to him of what he did and not simply saying attorney. Had he even said attorney, he would have had a fighting shot. Who knows what would have happened. But you see that also with these type of criminals. You see it in so many cases. They're not in like the Chris Hansen things and other stings. So many of them, they just, I don't know, there's something off where they just don't get it. And in that case, I'm grateful for that. That's for sure. There you go. With that, I'll let you go.
One of the other things it noted was that you had, quote, thoughts of killing his wife prior to coming to prison, unquote. That's what she said in her report.
Killing who?
You had thoughts of killing your wife, is what it said in the report. And so I was wondering if you could give me insight to that. I'm assuming your
Oh,
ex-wife.
no, that was way, way years back, when I was married, the thing about it is, one of my charges was that I went, assault, was always assaulting, my wife and stuff like this. And I found her, cheating on me 4 different times within a short period of time,
I was struggling to connect with my wife. We were young and newly married. She was pregnant. There were a lot of responsibilities that we'd taken on early on, including home ownership at that time. And I think that just proximity and